You know, if there's one thing we enjoy here at American Slacker, it's going to live events. Wouldn't you say, Jess?
Yeah, from you going to festivals, I like to go and see comedy. There's tons of stuff to choose from.
Oh, yeah. Who doesn't like a nice night out? And, who doesn't like to save a couple bucks on a night out? I mean, it's expensive to go out these days. Wouldn't it be nice if you could save a couple bucks, Jess?
I'm a cheap bastard and you know it.
Me too, man. What if I told you you could save a small percentage on your tickets by just entering a code?
What code would that be?
Man, all you got to do, go to seatgiant.com, enter the code SLACKER at checkout, and you're going to save quite a few bucks, actually. Not a small discount. It's a good amount. It's a decent amount.
So you're telling me I could go to my pickle hating fest for a small fraction of the cost of what it would normally be?
Dude, I'm telling you, you're probably going to get a drink on us if you enter the code SLACKER at checkout at seatgiant.com.
Drink not guaranteed.
Rolling.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You're listening to American Slacker Podcast with Matthew Gertz and Jesse Landers.
You'll see here the human male boasts the size of his testicles. I drive great when I'm blind. It's all about the sauce. Good, get him out of here. Get him out of here. Oh man, speaking of fucking, you want popcorn? I'll give you a popcorn kit. I'm just trying to go to Colorado and smoke some weed. Watch your fucking tots, huh? Those are my biscuits. Now, this is all alleged.
Welcome to American Slacker Podcast. As always, I'm Matt.
And I am Jesse, and today we are joined by our guest, Daniel Tharp, a.k.a. Bluesoul. Thank you for coming on the show, man.
Hey, man, thank you for having me.
We're happy to have you. Can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself, maybe a little bit about your work with the SCP Foundation?
Sure. So I am a moderator for the SCP Foundation Wiki. I've been in and around that site and community for almost 7 years now.
Wow.
And we're basically we're right about at the 5,000 mark, 5,000 different SCP entities that we secure, contain, and protect.
That's all. It's I like to kind of, when I first discovered this, it reminded me of like the Men in Black.
Oh, totally.
Something along those lines. For anyone that's can you give a basic breakdown of like the Foundation for anyone who's like brand new to what it is?
Sure. So this all happens on a wiki, and it is a collaborative writing project. It gets into it's basically horror writing is where it all started back in 2007. You know, somebody that's actually started on 4chan on the sci-fi paranormal board on there. Somebody posted this little format of a thing apropos of nothing out of the blue, and people were like, what is this? And a couple of people were like, I like this. I'm going to make my own, put my own spin on it. And so from there, people have, they join, they collaborate, they, get feedback, improve, and try to stick to a particular tone, which is that you have this huge organization that is dedicated to maintaining sort of your very normal way of life, that they contain all of the things and keep all of the inexplicable parts of reality out of your sight and out of your conscience, like your consciousness.
Wow. It's such a cool concept. And there's a lot of ideas out there that are cool on their own, but like this has been interesting to me in particular because it's such a community effort to create this overarching narrative, it seems like.
Yeah, and what's been funny is it looks like it's a big overarching narrative, and every time the narrative or what looks like a big canon sort of grows, you've got an equally large group that's like, I liked it the way it was. Like, why are we changing this?
There's always that group, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Well, there is. I mean, because there's this whole thing of stick to the format. You want it to look right and kind of look like it belongs with everything else that's on here. So back in I think this was 2014, maybe 13, for the contest to decide who would win SCP 2000. Because the way we do it, we release. You can write your own, and you don't have to collaborate with anybody if you don't want, but it's definitely to your advantage to do so. If when we run out of blocks of 1,000 numbers that you can use, we'll hold a big contest to decide who gets the honor of being 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000.
That benchmark.
Yeah, the benchmark, because it's a cool number, right? And it's for the same reason there's no particular SCP-001, because that's a really important number. Like, it's, objectively, it's probably the first thing they ever contained. So we let people, there's multiple versions in that same slot, actually. But anyway, for 2000, there was a really controversial one where basically all of these articles have an object class. And up to this point, there were 3. Like, not 4, 3. It was one of the 3, and you could put every article up to that point in one of those 3 boxes.
Okay.
And this one would not fit in any of those boxes, so they made a new object class. And holy shit, the firestorm that this unleashed of people going, no, you like, what's wrong with our 3? Is like, why do we just have to have 3? Like, at first we only had 1. Like.
That's a good point.
It seems counterintuitive. Like, you're limiting yourself on what your potential could be.
And it's funny because that ended up winning out. It did win 2000 in this new unique class that nothing else had before it. And every time we see, somebody will try something new, it's like, well, this class means under these circumstances, it means this. And some people are even now, this is 5 years later, still going, I really liked it the way it was. Okay, well, that was 5 years ago.
Yeah, things have to adapt and change over time, and it's cool that this format sort of allows for that, even if there are some sticks.
Yeah, there's always a contingent, but really it is. There's a lot of collaboration, and there's there's whole channels. We're still kind of old school. We use IRC for a lot of our collaboration and interaction, but there's forums and discords and all the other stuff available. And people will get together. There's little teams, for lack of a better word, that will a lot of times get together. They'll swap their draft pieces around and make a better work. And I think it does have the benefit of all the writing gets better. And it's gotten better and better over time. And that's the thing now. It's like the bar is so high because it's been, a decade now, over a decade of just steady incremental improvement to where, the stuff I wrote when I first got there in 2012 absolutely would not fly at this point. it would be deleted like in a heartbeat. And I'd say that because I'm one of the guys that runs deletions.
Nice. You have the power.
You would delete yourself. Yep.
And that's one thing, is you can always delete yourself, as it were, because we, even though it is like a wiki, and most people would say, well, it's a wiki, anybody can edit it. We have there's a big emphasis on the author. The original author has the final say in almost everything that they put out there. People can make edits for, stuff like there was a typo. There's there was a there versus there, mistake.
Small grammatical things.
Yeah, little stuff like that. But you can't, go into, one of our, really any of them. I was going to say, if you have like a really famous piece, I'm like, well, that thing would be better if it had a ray gun. Like, well, maybe, but you don't get to do that.
It's like the South Park turning all the guns in Star Wars into walkie-talkies.
Like, if you can get the author to be on board with it and say, yeah, they've got permission, let them do it, then sure. Otherwise, hell no. Well, it's gonna get. We'll revert it to how it was. because the authors do kind of have the final say in their works. I had they rolled out this big change to kind of they wanted to standardize on a particular word that doesn't actually exist, but it's an amnestic versus an amnesiac, and
I like
an amnestic is an amnestic is something that's supposed to make you forget things of some sort, but before that word was standardized, it was amnesiac, and they decided, okay, that's minor enough. Let's make these changes. I saw it online. I'm like, I don't like that. I want to say amnesiac because that's what it said when that was the thing to say at the time. So I reverted my own work on this site-wide thing. And I said, okay, works for us.
Nice. Well, it's good to have that freedom for the actual creators of the pieces.
Yeah, I mean, we want to support them in as much as possible, and that means they're the final say on any of this stuff. Like, we're really just the custodians of the content.
So it seems like anyone can pretty much write a piece. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get put in there, but
anybody can post an SCP article. They get voted on is the thing, and there's not really an it's okay vote. It's either +1 or -1, and this community at this point has seen a lot. We're approaching the time where we have to do this SCP 5000 contest. Probably in another month, we're going to be right there where we got to do it. So you've got a good chunk of the site that's literally seen thousands of these things get posted. And that means the margin for error has, really come down to 0. So
yeah. You got to be ready for some fantastic stuff at that.
Yeah. And it's not like it's not even the intent. It's just kind of the way it's become is, this is a big community. They're really passionate about it, which is awesome. It's not as awesome if you're a first time writer trying to, make your mark, because there's a lot of little things that, everybody's got their own little pet peeves that you do wrong. And if you've got, if you're at -10 on your article, it's eligible for deletion, and we'll, roll through it, staff will vote on it. And with 3 votes, which are pretty close to automatic, like if this is what the community wants, it's that, it meets all the criteria. Yeah, let's get rid of it.
Oh, wow.
See, it's intriguing to me is like, it's just so different from all the other storytelling or story writing, workshops or like sites or communities that I've seen. And like, it's really intriguing because I mean, that bit to adapt to a different scenario, I mean, can only open up, a different piece of like your ability to write. And that's what I find so intriguing about this. It's like, this is like got to get passed by the whole community. And furthermore, the whole like style of it is different than most of anything that like typical writers when they're starting, at least,
Totally. I think you don't see a lot of communities that focus on technical writing. It's an entirely different style. Like, you can go to a fan fiction community where it's going to mostly be more of your typical prose. Like you're writing a story. This is more like if this was your job and you had to write in the format that your boss expected of you. And
it's like a police procedural type of thing where you have to fill out the paperwork for an accident report.
Yeah, it is. And that's the stuff that has the biggest visibility, the most popularity. There is a whole set of what we call tales that are in that more traditional prose format. Those have historically not had the attention, the visibility, the popularity that the SCPs themselves do, but they have some of the most interesting material on the site, because once you're in that vein of writing the prose, you can do a lot more as far as shaping the universe, shaping how things came to be, in motivations. And this can really manifest with different groups of interest, which is what we call various antagonists or related, groups that are in the same universe as the Foundation and interact with them in some way, in building up their motivations. There's a group of interest of Dr. Wondertainment, and it's sort of a take on like a Willy Wonka, fantastical creations, normally more than a little bit dangerous, but they're whimsical. And, you think Dr. Wondertainment, you think about, Willy Wonka. It's even like the logo's this stylized purple W. Like it's very, let's call it an homage.
Okay. There's a lot of that in the joke articles, it seems.
Sure. And you can sort of build that universe up. And then somebody had an idea, said, well, I think Dr. Wondertainment was a woman. I think she was a Hispanic woman named Isabel. And, but he did such a great job with the writing. It was like, everybody's like, works for us. Isabel Wondertainment it is.
Nice.
That's hilarious.
And then other people just sort of take that and build on, well, what if Isabel had kids, and what if they were fighting over the Wondertainment fortune, or rights to toy distribution deals, or it gives you all of these options to sort of expand that narrative and how it intersects with the Foundation.
That's and that's more outside of the technical ends, which kind of threw me when I first stumbled upon SCP. It was like, what am I reading? Like, do I have clearance to like read this? It feels like I shouldn't be here.
That was my first experience too. I got linked to SCP-087 with no context, and this is. It's very chopped, it's very dry, very technical, but also describing this very inexplicable place and this inexplicable vision that they see at the bottom of a stairwell that seems to have no end. And I'm like, what the hell am I reading? And so I click the homepage, and the homepage looks quite different now than it did at the time. At the time, all it was it. The guts of it is still there, but it used to say, this content is classified, and more or less, if you're reading this and you don't have authorization, we already know when we're coming.
That's pretty intense. Oh my God.
This is Full Starts, the show about those presumptuous pictures that studios were sure would spawn a franchise, but didn't.
So back on Eternia, Skeletor sort of locates the key on Earth. Mm-hmm. With Google Maps, and then asks where his mercenaries are. He's had to walk past those mercenaries to get into the room.
Yeah,
guys, Skeletor is rude.
Go on. Okay, go on.
Film does not know what mercenaries are. Evelyn assembles them, but then introduces them to Skeletor as his finest warriors. Are they his warriors, or are they freelancers?
Okay, name them.
Beastman.
Come on. There's at least one. There's one that's an easy one.
I know.
Because some mother always try and ice skate uphill.
The Blade.
Thank you. That's two.
The fact that we were able to name two characters in this film,
you were able to name two,
instantly makes it better than Planet of the Apes.
If you like that, you can hear more on iTunes, SoundCloud, Twitter, and Facebook at Full Starts Pod.
Now, one question I had is, do you ever get people that are like freaking out and like hitting you up because like they're like, is this real?
Every day.
Okay, I was wondering because it's like
just multiple times a day.
Some of this shit, if you saw this, like you just randomly, like how you stumbled across 87, and I'm looking about it, and it's an incident that happened at a campus, redacted location. It's kind of crazy. If you stumble across this and have no fucking idea of what you're looking at, you're like, wait, what? And then you start stumbling across like all the other pages that are in here. You can freak yourself out not knowing that this is like just like a writing exercise.
Yeah. And the fun thing with that one is like, so you've got the main story and then you've got these exploration logs at the end. This is and the narrative builds up, the tension builds up in the story, and there's 3 logs, and it ends with them discovering for the first time a face present at the bottom of the stairs that's just sort of illuminated, and it ends there, and then there's a link to a 4th log, and if you click it, it says data expunged. It's totally gone.
Oh shit.
Oh yeah.
So like what?
Yeah, it's like, damn it,
what's missing from this fucking story?
But without knowing that they're trying to tell you a story, and the impression is that whatever was in this 4th document could not be, was totally expunged from their records, wherever there actually is.
It's like, and then to keep the peace, you can't fucking know.
That and the blackouts, man, like a true confidential document. I love it.
It's the old black highlighter.
Oh man.
One thing that kind of threw me off when I first discovered the wiki, which actually I guess is a good time to say like how I stumbled upon this. I was on Reddit, and I was just scrolling through like the home, timeline, and suggested like subreddits came up, and one was the Church of Peanut, and I was like, what the hell is this? And I clicked on it, and it showed me this weird like sculpture that looks like there's blood on it and like eyes and like weird shit, and there's like, it looked like it was all just memes devoted to this weird sculpture looking thing. So I was like, all right, I need to figure out what the hell this thing is. So I dig in, and it leads me to the SCP article
to 173.
173, and I guess this one is a super popular one.
173 was the original. This was the first one ever posted.
Oh wow.
So this was on 4chan on /X, back in 2007.
Oh wow.
It's been more or less preserved in its entirety. So what you're seeing now is basically exactly as it was then. It's the original. Everything's been sort of built on the conventions that were laid out. Too? Yeah, the photo is
that's cool.
As it was. So and what's the tricky thing for us is that we're a wiki, and we have to license. We have a license that people can share our stuff. Absolutely free of charge. Other people must also share free of charge. But this image is copyrighted. It is not free of charge. So what we had, and this was sort of a pain point because we got super, super popular. And then there's this elephant in the room of, we don't have the rights to actually show this thing.
Ooh.
So,
oh damn.
So this is a sculpture from a Japanese national and a picture from an installation at an art gallery.
Okay.
And
okay.
So one of our staff members, one of the administrators, is Japanese. She's Japanese American. She worked with the artist, tried to explain as much as you can what we are and how this thing came to be so incredibly, not just popular, but pivotal to the work.
Yeah.
And we ended up getting, and you can see it down there, that the sort of disclaimer at the bottom of the work of all of the things that we have had to agree to. Basically, we have a license to use it, which is awesome. It was like,
wow, that's a big step. Yeah.
It was absolutely huge for, having it all make sense and be what we wanted it to be. And that's really the only one like it. We would not go through those hoops for anything anymore.
Yeah.
I don't blame you. It's a lot of hassle, but I'm glad I stumbled upon this one first because it seems like a good one to start with.
It is. And like I said, it lays out all of the conventions that people have tried to stick to. And we're, from the very, very beginning, people were like, okay, so item number, object class, special containment procedures, description. That format has not changed one bit since that work, from 2007.
That's awesome.
And that's kind of cool because with as many works as we have now, we've got, I want to say 4,600 over.
Oh, wow.
We are, I would say probably at least 4,000 of them use that exact same set, but we managed to tell distinctly different stories through each of them. And, it's only, those little placeholders, that object class, description, procedures, those just sort of anchor the work and kind of set it up for, how the rest of the work's going to go, and doesn't really place a ton of restrictions on it. People have learned how to work with it and sort of use those to enhance the piece.
Yeah. And it's cool because like that just set the foundation for the foundation.
Yeah. And what's fun with this is like, I was actually just thinking about this. I recorded my podcast yesterday, and one of the SCPs that I covered is I have my script here from the opening to it. This is a set of containment procedures, and it's the idea at this point is these procedures come towards the very top. So while it's supposed to be instructions for how to successfully contain this thing, from a literary perspective, what you're doing is setting expectations. And the wilder these procedures get, the more there is to answer for later in the piece. So I'm going to give you just the last, a couple of highlights from these procedures.
Cool.
A Foundation certified cannibal is to accompany Mobile Task Force Lambda 14 manhunters in investigating all restaurants serving barbecue in the southern U.S. Until SCP-4670 is recontained, all Foundation personnel within the southern United States are encouraged to avoid consuming barbecue pork products or engaging in conjugal relations with Greek women.
What? What is that setting up for? That's crazy. At first, I was like, okay, maybe I have a theory that there's like a cook who's turning pork into people. But then the Greek women thing kind of totally threw me for a loop.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like your build up to payoff kind of comes from those procedures, and you set a lot of expectations. Like you have to go back and answer for, why does the Foundation have certified cannibals? like
certified. How do you certify a cannibal?
And so that story ends up being sort of a. What's interesting is it's sort of a modern retelling of the story of Circe from the Odyssey, because this particular writer is pretty well versed in mythology and likes to sort of put modern spins on them, not only modern spins, but in the context of the Foundation. And so it ends up all making complete sense, provided you. And the other thing is, this stuff is not really always laid out to be the most intuitive thing. Like it's written at a college or post-grad level. And sometimes the reading requires to kind of have that sort of knowledge base too, or you're not going to get all of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And along with the terminology, like coming in as like a newcomer to reading the articles, you get lost and you sort of have to do your research. You have to study like the terminology to even understand the articles.
Right. Yeah, no, it's a lot to take in. And, at this point, it's, there's more now than ever. And I guess that's just kind of the way that it goes. But there's a ton of guides available. We are fully aware of what a big honking creation this is at this point. So there's a whole guide hub that explains, what's a mobile task force? What are some of the ones you might see? What do they do? What are these object classes? What do they actually mean?
Yeah. I went into that one for sure.
I was going to say real quick, can you break down the classes? What are there for now?
Sure. So there's every SCP article, just about, there's I would say you can probably count on one hand the ones that don't have an object class. And this class is, it has to do with the difficulty of containment or the ramifications of containment. People will sometimes think of it as in terms of how dangerous the thing is, and that's not necessarily the case, because our safest unit of our safest object class is actually just called safe, and but a nuclear bomb would be considered a safe class SCP, because if we can just lock it in a box and absolutely nothing's going to happen, then it's safe, because because the understanding is that, well, we're pretty good at locking things in boxes. We exceed at it. And from there you have Euclid, which is actually what 173 is and was sort of where everything came from. So that was also sort of the mystery of it at the time. And we've had to sort of go back and explain this after the fact. We've had to kind of go back and give our interpretation of what that might actually mean, object class Euclid. So at this point, it's basically the object we are not assured that it will stay contained if we just leave it alone. It might be intelligent. It might behave in an unpredictable manner.
Okay.
So we are not assured that we can just lock it in a box and forget about it.
The box might open.
They might make their way out of the box. Okay. Whether they intended to or not, and that's actually a big distinction between it and Keter, or Keter if you like pronouncing it wrong.
Ooh. I hear a flame war.
Well, no, it's the thing is, you only see it written, so it's Keter. Would be totally reasonable to say Keter. except it's a Jewish word. It means crown. And
okay.
So there were a few of those sorts of references in, particularly in the newer, more esoteric classes. But these Keter skips are and I realized I just said something. I said skip, which is what we will, if you've, I will tend to colloquialize SCP to skip because it's easier to say. And there's also sort of this in-universe thing that if they're around them all day, that might be what they just sort of refer to them as, because SCP is,
it's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful. It's like, it feels strangely like more formal that way. And
I like skip though. That's a good way to do it.
Yeah. So these Keter skips are more actively hostile or more actively seeking to break free of containment. So those three, served the site well and faithfully for a number of years. And then somebody had an idea, hey, what about a skip that would actually help the Foundation if it was used? That we're containing it because we think it would actually benefit us to contain it. And thus SCP-2000 and this Thaumiel classification came to be. And since then, there's been a few others. There's one where we contain one of two entities because it's the better of two evils, or we leave this uncontained because the ramifications of it being contained are even worse. There's been little edge cases like that a lot of people have, for the most part, just sort of begrudgingly accepted, and then it's less begrudging with time, and then it's just part of it. It's just part of the site culture.
Well, there's always going to be rule breakers, and they tend to do cool things. So
and there's always at this point you can't just tell a scary story. Mm-hmm. We've got those. We've got so many of those that just telling, having a spooky guy or having, some, magical item or something, like, we really don't give a shit. Like, we've seen so many of those.
Right.
So, it's like, tell me why I should care about this. Tell me what, why do I have any investment in containing this thing, or do I have any reason to sympathize or empathize with either the Foundation or maybe the thing itself that's being contained? Mm-hmm. And that is where, at this point, you have to have the narrative. You have to be able to tell a story. You can't just have, 173, if you look away, he'll snap your neck. Yeah. he likes snapping those necks, that 173.
Item 420, this bong will kill you every time you try to smoke it.
SCP 420J.
Oh, really? Someone wrote that one.
Yep, that's site administrator Quicken Grooven wrote that almost a decade ago now. It's the best redacted in the world.
We'll have to give that one a read. We'll probably post that one actually up on Facebook.
Well, let's get down to the bones of why we brought you here, and that's to talk about SCP-1000. All right, and for the people at home that don't know what SCP-1000 is, it's the Squatch. They got the Sasquatch contained in the database.
It's a Keter class. So it's up there. I'm guessing Sasquatch doesn't like being contained.
And the cool thing with this was, I think this was one of the first pieces where narrative really became important. And the thing that I found is that these 1,000 winners will set the tone for what's to come for the next 1,000. So this was sort of the beginning of where we're actually telling a story with this. Yes, Sasquatch is 1,000, but the bigger deal is he's not alone. He is actually part of a civilization that humanity overthrew. And at one point that civilization actually exceeded humanity's capacity. And And this piece ends, and I see you pulling it up there. I think there's a couple of lines at the very bottom of that, and they're from the perspective of one of the Squatches. If you want to read that,
yeah, we forgive you, given choice for now, not forever. Let us back in. And I've got to say, there's a lot about this whole page that's just really interesting. I mean, breaking down the story of like giving them a story of how they've been eliminated down to 1 to 5% of their population through a pseudo disease, and like there's a lot of cool story elements about this that just like it's fun, man. I really dig it.
It puts more depth to Bigfoot for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, this is like I gotta say, this is my favorite, of course.
When you said this to us, I was like, "Oh, cool, man!" I didn't realize that they did a Bigfoot one. We're always talking about the Squatch sightings.
Oh man, yeah.
I think I heard one a couple of weeks ago saying you had a really drunk guy calling the police out because he was being stalked.
Yep.
Yeah. Squatchers will do that. They're stalking like creature. We found out through research, and yeah. Not to be confused with rape apes, though.
Oh, no. Those are, Tennessee? And they jump from the trees, apparently.
They jump from the trees. We haven't heard a rape ape sighting in a long, long time. Thank God.
Oh, man.
We always have our ear to the ground about any... maybe we would be a benefit to the Foundation, and trying to continue the project.
We can
go for it.
The add-ons for SCP-1000.
So what are some of your favorites as someone who's seen so many, I'm sure?
So yeah, and especially with the podcast that I'm doing now, this is actually the most I've ever read the site, because I got put in a staff position a couple of years after being there, and the sort of backwards thing is the more time you spend maintaining the wiki, the less time you spend actually reading the wiki, because you're handling all of the user interactions and all of the other little pieces that go into it. And it's like, fuck, I haven't read a skip in 3 years. And I actually hadn't.
Wow.
So I did this podcast, and now it's like, so I'm reading every SCP posted, and I've read everyone posted this year, of which there's been, I think, 1,000 already. So between the 4,000 contest up to this point. So, well, actually, I guess that's not quite right. There's probably been, okay. So here's the thing: everything you see on the site, all the articles that are positively rated, that represents, I would say at best, the best 10% of the SCPs that have ever been posted on the site. We delete about 9 out of 10.
Oh wow!
Because the bar has been set so high, and people are incredibly selective at this point on what they think deserves to hang with the stuff that we've got up to this point.
Mm-hmm.
So some of my favorites. Well, as I told you, 087 was the first one I read. 093 was the first one that my wife read and had very vivid nightmares about, which is fun. My flat out favorite is 1425, and it's basically, it was the introduction of a group of interest that is you could draw some parallels to modern Scientology if they had access to actual paranormal abilities.
Ooh.
If they had access to things like mind control, and
if they weren't scary enough.
Yeah, if they didn't just have the power of money and secret
Celebrity
prisons.
Influence. Yeah, that too.
So it's this really vividly told story of the Foundation having to scramble to basically destroy all knowledge or publicity of a book. And this book became super popular. It was on Oprah. It was on, they talked about it, all of the hosts of American Idol. And this was about 6 years ago now, to give you some perspective of like what would have been like super, super popular. So, you've got all of the hosts of American Idol all giving these sort of cryptic conversations back and forth that only make sense if you're part of this fifth church. And then sort of as one, open their mouths and start exhaling black smoke. And the remainder of this episode of American Idol, the remaining 22 minutes or so, is just them exhaling black smoke constantly.
That's horrifying. Oh my God.
What the fuck?
It sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah. So, and that's still my favorite piece on the site, just for all of the cool shit that the author does with, it jumps back and forth between the typical SCP format, the narration of this episode of American Idol, or and then going into basically how we had to work with people we'd rather not to actually contain this. And we have a whole thing where sometimes we didn't actually succeed, but what we've done is convince everybody, without fail, that what you're experiencing now is the way it's always been. And it's sort of a convention that gets used every so often. I've actually seen a little spike in it lately of this ennui protocol. And it was this
mass amnestic
it's
what the other word was.
It's basically, it's like what you're experiencing now. Like, apparently, you used to be able to always lucid dream. Like, you could lucid dream on command, but due to some anomalous footage that got out that tried to control the ability to dream, and it was too little too late, and we had to trigger this ennui protocol. So now it's only a small percentage of people that can still do it.
That's okay. That's an interesting way to approach it. I like that.
Hey everyone, my name is Drew, and I host a podcast called Dudes with Brews on a Porch, where we let the drinks flow and the conversations go. Each and every week, me and a friend of mine, we sit down, we try a different craft brew, usually from the state of Wisconsin, and we just sit down and have a conversation. We talk about all aspects of life. Once a month, we talk about paranormal stuff, and we always have a good time. You can find our show, Dudes with Brews on a Porch, on iTunes, Google Play, and anywhere else you find your podcasts. Grab a cold one and hang out with us each and every week right here on the porch.
I have to say, one of the ones that probably gave me the most like chills and straight up fear, I don't know why, but I mean, like it's just kind of a horrifying idea, is Skip 1733.
Is that the chess machine?
This is the DVR of the Celtics Heat game.
Oh yeah, no, that's great, isn't it?
I don't know why, but it gives me like chills down my body every time I think about it.
No, it's really good. So yeah, that one, to give like a brief synopsis, it's a videotape of Celtics Heat. This was an NBA playoffs game, as I recall, and every time you play the game, every time you play this tape, you observe that all of the people in it, the basketball players, the audience, the announcers, they realize they've seen this before. And as it keeps playing, the sort of society within this basketball game starts breaking down. And it starts out easy, like after like the first dozen playthroughs or so, the score is like 0-0 going into the second half, because everybody knows what everybody else is going to do. They defend each other perfectly. But by the end of it, there's human sacrifices. There's, and I think what it is like they put out there, it looks like the stadium is locked. Like these people can't get out.
It's basically like every time it's played through, the people on the tape become more aware of the fact that they're on a tape and start freaking the fuck out.
I don't know if it's that they're aware they're on a tape, or if they keep observing the same things are happening to them. They're aware they're stuck in this sort of time loop. They're experiencing these same things. And I think the scary thing would be that they don't know why.
Yeah.
And that's why they start, there's these human sacrifices. They're trying, I think they take Paul Pierce out to the middle of the court and crucify him.
Yeah, it turns into total fucking chaos. So then they just like, the Foundation just locks up the tape or the DVR or whatever. Yeah. And there's just like, we're just not gonna like play that again.
and there is sort of a guiding factor that I think almost everybody on the wiki likes to sort of incorporate in their writing, and that's that the Foundation is cold, it's not cruel. Like once we have enough data to come to a conclusion, and it's likely that no more data is really going to help, and we're probably kind of being dicks by doing as much as we already have, then we'll leave it be. We know how to contain the thing, and that's one of the things I think we actually don't have enough of. If you're an aspiring writer and you want to get into this, you'll have my upvote if you can explore that boundary where you have people within it that may not quite get it. They might be a little more cruel. They might test a little more than is necessary. What if on that 1733 you had some junior researcher or somebody that kept playing it because they thought they were insisting, we don't have enough data, we need to know what's causing this. And it's like, we don't really need to know at this point. We know what it is. We know enough, and we're just making people, whether these are real people or not, they're very obviously, terrified and frantic.
I just wouldn't want to be stuck in an NBA DVR match. Like,
Right.
fuck.
Yeah, if you get a choice to ever do that, skip it.
Yeah, absolutely. I second that. So it's cool because then there's the opposite end of the skips where like it seems to like a lot of it's based in that horror aspect, but there's ones like what is it? Here Be Dragons is one of the more popular ones. I think
I think some of the best ones are ones that start out kind of haha funny, and then you realize, oh shit, that's actually terrifying. I'm trying to think of the ones that I think best sort of exemplify that. There is one, SCP-326. It's a toaster that anybody that is in the vicinity of this considers the toaster to be them. They'll say, oh, that's me. And
okay.
And so there's, this sort of, the story is, it's a fairly short story. And I don't really want to spoil it, but it starts out as a silly premise and then goes into, oh no, like this isn't good at all. I hate this.
Yeah, that's the hard thing about discussing some of these is like they're each their own little story, and like there's plenty to look at. So if we do spoil one or two, we apologize on the show, but it's only in the attempts to I guess hook you and get you into the rest of them.
I wanted to say and there's also tales. So if you're into something that's a little more like random story driven or narrative, tales, I've like read a few while we've been talking, and they're like fucking awesome. There's like random, like there's one with a Pokemon like storyline. There's like random stuff in here that's just so interesting. If you're like, I don't want to look at the files right now, you could switch off and there's just as much in the fucking tales section too, which is really cool.
There is actually more non-SCP content than SCP content on the wiki by count.
Oh wow!
You take all the tales, all the GOI formats, all the canons, which we haven't even talked about because that's sort of its own more like a story arc that might involve some base premise being different. So my favorite right now, it needs a little bit of setup, but the canon is called End of Death, and we had a contest a while back called the Doomsday Contest. And this is a thing we do a couple times a year. I'd say probably 4 times a year, 6, somewhere in there. We'll hold a contest and give sort of a prompt or some stipulation that, people need to try to accomplish in their writing to win. So we had the Doomsday Contest. It was, the end of the world, end of this, end of that. And somebody came up with, what about the end of death? What about if people could no longer die? Nobody was physically capable of dying, even in traumatic situations. If you're say your head gets cut off, you have full awareness not only of that your head is chopped off, but still of your body as well. You can feel all of that through these means.
Oh, that'd be terrible.
So there's, and this was set up in a work. It's SCP-2718. Where one of the O5 Council, who is this group of 13 decision makers for the entire Foundation, one of them dies and experiences death and is brought back. And they describe it to the rest of the Council and has this line, death is an SCP that must be contained. And the whole thing sort of builds off of that. And somebody took a joke article from 2718, and this is 2718-J. This is a convention we use for joke articles. So this uses some of the conventions of, it's basically assuming that people were no longer capable of dying. This is a luxury hotel that they chuck your non-functional corpse in, and it has all of these great amenities. It's got a stripper pole and a big buffet, and all of these great things that you'll have a staff of people that'll come in and wipe your ass and do all the things you can't do anymore because Like you're not dead, but your body has nothing left to it either. Like, and a lot of the jokes will do that. It's like it's this combination of humor and horror, and that's actually a lot of people think, well, I can be funny. It's like, yeah, that's fine. It's not. It's harder to write a joke article than a main list SCP because you still have to nail the exact format of an SCP. It still has to be scary to at least enough people, but it has to be funny too. So that's what, there's a couple hundred jokes, if that, versus, almost 5,000 SCPs now.
Well, I mean, it's crazy, just the scope of these articles, how it can go from like joke to something that's gonna like literally give you nightmares.
There's one that it actually went the other way around. Somebody wrote the joke first, and then somebody else made it scary. Where there's a rock, and it makes you procrastinate. And the whole article is like it's mostly blank, and the guy says it's a rock that makes you procrastinate. I'll finish the rest of this later. And that's the whole article. That's the joke. And then somebody did a tale called Procrastinati, where they basically ground up this rock and dispersed it into the air and created this totally apathetic society through this one little jokey rock that somebody came up with, a few years prior.
Oh, wow. So it's like, it seems like a lot of works to do that. They'll leapfrog sort of off of one thing that's been created and go in a totally new direction.
Yeah, and I think that's easier and more cohesive for everything to really work out. It's not often that people have the ability to take an entirely new facet of the Foundation and build it, understand it at a deep level enough to make it compelling, and then have it be interesting to other people.
True.
And it's a rare gift. There haven't been a huge number of people that have really shaped the Foundation in that way. It's all been sort of, a lot of it, I should say, because certainly not all of it, but a lot of it's been, there's this established thing, we're going to put a little twist on it, and we've sort of established a little new thing. And it's just sort of built outward and outward. But at this point, when you've got 10,000 articles on the wiki, then you have a lot of material to work from to build something new, or to look at and say, I really love this. Like, I love this end of death thing. I haven't come up with the right idea yet for how to put my stamp on it, but I want to. One day it'll hit me, and I'll, go write it down. And, it might be nice of me to show it to the people that were, really deeply involved in that end of death. It's not a requirement, but certainly show it to them like, hey, I want to do this. What do you think? And mostly because they know if it makes sense with what they had in mind. And, yeah, go for it. And, post it, see how it does, see if people like it.
That's awesome. It's cool collaborative effort.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give our audience a little overview of what you do on SCP Cafe, your podcast?
Sure. So what I've been doing since late last year is I read every SCP that is posted. I make some selections out of the ones that were posted that week, and I give a little recap of each of the ones that I think are really interesting to talk about. They're not necessarily the 5 best articles of the week. I think they're the 5 that are most interesting to discuss. Now, the last few weeks, there's been a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. So instead of my 5, there's been 7, 8, 9 to talk about, because they're, I don't want to do them the disservice of not discussing them when they can, I think, be useful to people, because there's a couple of things that I think this benefits. Of course, authors love hearing about their own work, which actually benefits me too, because then they're more invested to go back and keep writing. It's a little cyclical sort of thing, but they give me material, which is awesome, and the material's good. So I talk about it, and then they keep doing it. They keep contributing. But it also, I try to talk about things that I see in the work that either I like and try to explain from a storytelling perspective what they're trying to do, or where they maybe missed the mark on the format, or what, you did this. That's not how we would normally go about this, given the track record that the Foundation built up. We would probably do this instead. And in doing that, I think that also, maybe there's a non-zero chance that it's helping create some better works. People are hearing this and they're going, okay, yeah. And that's the sort of thing I'm going to be trying to really focus on in a new little sort of mini series, I guess we'll call it, called Making a Monster. This is basically, I'm going to be writing my first mainline SCP in 6 years. The last one I wrote was SCP-1388. It's terrible, but I leave it alone because I want people to see the sort of things that...
now I'm going to it.
Yeah, no, check it out. It's a pair of underwear that you put them on, and they've got superheroes all over them. You put these underwear on, and it gives you these delusions of grandeur. And but it doesn't actually confer any special abilities. It just makes you think you're Superman.
Delusional.
So you'll have some guy try to stop a train. They're all mad with power and splat. And
these underwear make you crazy,
basically. And this is something that we actually kind of actively discourage people from doing now, which is part of why I leave it alone. Is I say, yeah, you used to be able to do something that made you crazy until you were dead, but now you don't. Like, I'm sorry, we've totally beaten this horse well past dead. We've broken its bones. It's practically glue by now. So that's why I leave it alone. It's like I could certainly go back and rewrite it, but it serves an important lesson. They're like, yeah, no, it's positively rated. If I wrote it right now, if I posted it exactly as it was now, it wouldn't be.
It's important to kind of preserve that benchmark, and it's cool listening along to your show, which I was looking for something to kind of clarify a little bit more of what SCP is, and I have a commute to work, so your show fit perfectly into that, and I've been really enjoying the content.
Well, I mean, thank you. I really appreciate that. This started out like, I don't know if it's just me, but like in the wintertime, like around Christmas time, I start getting really antsy. It's like I've been locked in. It's all freaking cold out. I don't want to do shit outside.
Right.
And I get in that creative mode. Like I'm gonna I want to start something new. I want to create something. I do that right around Christmas. Like I can pretty much set my watch to it. Like late December, I buy some domain and start on some crazy bullshit. And the trouble is the motivation's gone by like February. So this has actually also been like, this is a community I've been around for so long. It's a natural sort of thing for me to try and commit to it and actually do it and commit to a weekly basis. So that's been a lot of the drive behind it too, is just, hey, it's if you're kind of a serial slacker, which it's kind of the nature of what my sort of creative juices have been lately. It's like, just do it. And the longer you go, the longer you can commit to something, whether it's, writing these articles, whether it's contributing in some way. We've got this huge art community. Anytime you can sort of stick to a pattern like this, it becomes easier. It just, and now it's like, I didn't think I would get there, but I'm super excited about recording the show. By like Thursday, I'm ready to go. Like I want to just get in and knock it out and talk with people about it and show these authors, like, because their work, really stood out to me. I want to say, I really appreciated it. I talked about it at length here. The quote that I gave earlier about the consuming barbecue pork products or engaging in conjugal relations with Greek women, that dude was bugging me for like almost a week, because I told him, like, I can't not cover this this week. Like you are automatically one of the 5 I'm going to discuss, just because of this first line, and because it's interesting. It lets me have that conversation about, we do this to set expectations, and like, yes, it's sort of a what why but so I actually used that as my lead-in for the show last week, over this really dramatic music, and it was one of my favorite things I've ever done.
Nice.
But it's all just been a ton of fun doing the show, and then with with making a monster, it's going to be about writing. And the thing that we keep trying to do is we keep trying to give new writers resources, and you're not going to get through to all of them. We have, this huge community. We have an age limit, by the way, and it's 15 years old. It's not super high, but we still get a ton of users that are, 12, 11, 10 years old.
Wow.
That first of all, your parents should know you're reading this stuff.
It's interesting to see, because if they keep, I would just tell them keep writing, because if they're doing it at that age.
Yeah, we don't want to discourage them, but at the same time, it tends to not be a great addition to the community,
Right.
Like it's difficult enough at 15. Like, Jesus Christ, I don't think I was a functional, human until like 25.
Right.
So,
yeah. Right. Yeah.
So, gotta start SCP juniors.
It's not a bad idea. We've got a couple of staff members that are teachers, and one specifically does really small education. So that's not the worst idea. Actually, we might pitch that.
There you go.
But we try and put all these materials out for new writers, and this Making a Monster series is going to be sort of my contribution to that, because I'm going to talk at length on every part of it, because I'm going to be writing it. This is the perfect time to talk about why, what the descriptions for, what the procedures are meant to accomplish, and that a lot of here's a weird thing that I've seen over the years without fail. People will go in, they'll just start writing it top to bottom, SCP, blah 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 blah, object class, keter, procedures. It's like, well, why did you put the object class in before you decided what the hell you were writing?
Yeah, right. It's kind of doing it backwards.
For a lot of people, it's because they see this Keter class and they go, well, that's the most dangerous, so that's what I want to write. It's not necessarily the most dangerous. It's also not necessarily the most interesting.
Right.
But so it's
the idea should come first, and then the definition of the idea after.
Yeah, and anymore, it's almost like the narrative, the thing you want to talk about, the thing you want to get out there is actually more interesting than the anomaly. And that is what I'm really going to be trying to hammer on in this series.
Nice. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing more of Making a Monster, and I'll definitely be listening to more SCP Cafe, giving me the updates on the weekly submissions there.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate it. It's been fun, and actually with the community support's been unbelievable. Like, I just did this, let's see how it goes. Like, I got a microphone. I love doing this sort of stuff. Like, let's just try it. And immediately people are like, this is awesome. And I realized nobody's doing this. Nobody's ever done a regular show. So our subreddit has 350,000 people. It's a huge community. Nobody's ever done this. I didn't even go into it realizing that. I was like, nobody's done a weekly show just talking about stuff that happened this week.
That's awesome.
So it's just for that, and having this community now that's really gotten engaged with it and really, wants to talk about not just the works, but the show and how to improve it. It's, that's all I need to keep going. It's that was the motivation I was missing. It's just getting that. And, maybe that's, kind of greedy or self-centered or whatever, but I think a lot of people are like that they need that feedback on their work. It's very few people that are totally self-motivated that can just, produce something week after week, day after day, whatever it might be, and just keep that up for years. That I don't know a lot of people that can do that.
Well, I'm glad to see that your show SCP Cafe will be going on for years to come. Then I can guess.
That's the plan. I can't put it to myself that way, so I'm like, oh
no, don't just day by or week by week.
Yeah, you do it week by week, and it stays fun. You start talking about what are you gonna do for the 1,000th episode? And I'm like, no.
That there, you gotta bring on whoever wins the 1,000 contest or something.
Yeah, that's the thing. The cafe has not had any guests yet, and that's something I'm gonna get into. I'm gonna take a little bit that I've learned here. This is my first guest appearance on a podcast and
nice.
Take what I picked up here and kind of apply that and see what because there's things I want to talk about. We have these I told people, and I've kind of lied to them because it never happened, that when people write these 001 proposals, which is, what was sort of the origin story behind the Foundation, I wanted to bring these authors on because in this community, that's, for most people, considered your most important work. Like, it's your capstone piece. And I want to bring them on and talk about this, like go like an hour with them on just all the different facets, like what inspired you, what's the deeper meaning, and what did people take away from it. And but I haven't
That's some good Patreon content right there.
Yeah, no, it's
Yep.
Well, and I do have the Patreon, but I have been really adamant that I'm not doing any Patreon exclusive stuff. Like, they'll get stuff a week early, but I don't want any of this stuff to be gated by money, because Wiki's not gated by money. You can do everything there is to do on the Wiki and never spend a cent. So I want it to be very much in that same, in that same mold with the podcast and Patreon. So, but yeah, no, it's something that I think will be really interesting for a lot of people, and that'll be more aimed at like the experienced types, the writers that, have been around for a while and like to know what inspires the other people, because as long as a lot of these people have been doing it, they still ask each other things like, where do you get your ideas? Like, as well as I do, it's not really a thing you can explain as much. I do actually try to do that in this Making a Monster first episode, of ways you might poke ideas out from hiding places and, turn them into maybe something you can write about.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and passion is so important to find in life. And one of the things that like I first took from this is like there's a lot of passion in all these like papers. The time that's taken out of people's lives to really just like people are at work fucking thinking about it, like thinking about these entries, and just, I think it's so important, man. And you hear a lot of people say it, but it's just, if you don't have that passion for whatever, I hate to call it a hobby, but like that thing that you do that's not work, that's just you do it for your soul. I really fucking appreciate
side
that.
grind.
And there's
that's good.
And I encourage everybody, fucking check out SCP. How can the people check this place out? What's the fucking easiest way?
The easiest way would probably be to Google SCP Foundation.
We got slackers here. You got to keep it nice. And
the website is scp-wiki.net. That is the official site. There's tons of communities. We have a subreddit that's, like I said, it's got hundreds of thousands of followers. There's new content. Every 5 freaking minutes, refresh the page, there's going to be something new. And it's a great community. I've been moderating that for 6 years now.
Well, that's fantastic. And where would people find your podcast?
Well, SCP Cafe can be found at scp.cafe.
Nice.
You can also, thank you. You can also find it on the usual suspects: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. There's nothing fancy on YouTube yet, because YouTube doesn't care about you until you're worth like $1 million to them. So I don't really care about them.
Yeah, we know how that goes.
Yeah, like if that's the easiest way to consume it, awesome. I'll keep posting them. I don't have any gripe with them, but I'm like, hey, this would be cool if I could like link to these SCPs as I talk about them. Just a big card like in the middle of my little logo. Like, here, click this button to see this link as I'm talking about it. Sounds smart, right? No, you can't do that. They said come back when you've got 4,000 played hours in the last year and a minimum of 1,000 followers. Seriously?
Wow. Jeez. There's a lot of limitations with YouTube.
They're
for
gatekeepers.
You got to earn fucking benefits to adjust normal settings that you should be able to. For many levels.
God forbid you give me a reason to want to use you as a platform.
Yeah,
seriously,
it's bad enough they fuck their whole ad system up really, really bad. So I mean, it's the fucking there's mayhem over there.
So stick to the podcast players for now.
Hell yeah. But if you're watching us on YouTube, hey, we appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, all the slackers at home tuning in. We love each and every one of you. If you want to get at me at MWG Media on Instagram and on Xbox Live at Matty G from HP.
And I'm on all them shits at Landers the Plane. Daniel, thank you for coming on the show.
Hey, thank you guys. This was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, man. Thanks. And we'll do it again sometime soon. All right, people. Until next time, that's it.
There you go.
We smoking America. We passing America. I'm mapping America. I'm psyching America. We talking America. We blazing America. This is fucking America. We slacking America.
This has been American Slacker Podcast. You can reach the show by searching American Slacker on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Reddit. Or send them an email to americanslackerpodcast@gmail.com. You can download and rate American Slacker on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, and all other podcast platforms. Visit the show's website, aspodcast.com, where you will find every episode, official merchandise, and links to their Patreon if you would like to support American Slacker.
Give me a minute. Think about the second set of passing. Man, I gotta go and get it, grab it. Why you gotta go and acting savage? Smoking weed, I gotta feed the habit. Now I'm on some other shit. Things that I gotta go get. Medical all on my slip. You ballin' like dominoes, bitch. Stuck in my ways, fucking high days, fucking sideways in the driveway. We smoking America. We passing America. I'm mapping America. I'm psyching America. We talking America. We blazing America. This is fucking America. We slacking America. We slacking America.